Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, let me request you to take your seats. We are about to start. distinguished heads of state and government, delegates, honored guests, I now open the joint resumed third meetings of COP28, CMP 18, and CMA 5. As we continue the national statements, I would like to remind distinguished speakers of the actions in place to ensure effective time management. There is a 3-minute time limit for statements during the high-level segment. Statements should be as concise as possible, noting that full texts of the official statements will be made available on the UNFCCC website. And finally, please note that heads of state or government who are not in the plenary at the time of delivery of their statements will be scheduled to speak at the end of all statements of the same category. Dear distinguished heads of state and government, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, let us begin. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Jose Ramos Horta, President of Timor-Leste. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Good morning, Mr. President. Because His Holiness the Pope is not here, he was supposed to speak before me, can I take his time as well? I was told I can. Sorry, I'm joking. Mr. Chairman, I'm joking. And I don't see any Majesty here, any Highness here, so I go straight to Your Excellencies. Today is the 52nd anniversary of the United Arab Republic, so I warmly congratulate His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan for his inspiring leadership in contributing $100 million to the Loss and Damage Fund for those who bear the impact of climate change. We welcome the historic decision just taken to operationalize the Loss and Damage Fund and appreciate the financial pledges made so far. We trust that these will be new and additional to existing climate finance and other development assistance. A vast gap remains, and it is our people hope that will continue, and it's our people that will continue to shoulder the greatest cost of climate change. I commend the technical team of my country, Timor-Leste, under the leadership of Ambassador Adão Barbosa, the delegation is here, for their hard work, their competence in serving in the Transitional Committee on Loss and Damage, working hard towards the realization of these funds in the interest of the most vulnerable countries. I urge WHO to declare a public health emergency of international concern, the highest level of emergency that can be declared by WHO. Timor-Leste experiences multiple climate change impacts: floods, droughts, landslides, and sea level rise. This leads to decrease in agricultural output, increased food insecurity, water shortage, destruction of infrastructure, loss of human life, displacement, and the limited financial and technological capacity to quickly recover and rebuild loss and damage. We need to define climate finance as new and additional to a revised, increased ODA to at least 0.7% of GDP, and without the cumbersome, inflated bureaucracy procedures. In addition, there has to be a global debt write-off for LDCs, seeds, and in particular the G7 plus fragile states. We must recognize that economic recovery from COVID-19 pandemic, Ukraine war, and the climate catastrophes, while we are saddled with massive debts caused by shark loans from multilateral lending institutions and the commercial banks, is an impossibility to recover. Timor-Leste ocean boasts exceptional biodiversity, extensive fisheries, and the healthiest corals in the region. 24 species of whales and dolphins frequent our waters, which is among the highest recorded number of cetaceans anywhere in the world. Our waters contain the largest creature ever to have lived on planet Earth, the mighty blue whale. However, our nation's marine life is being plundered by illegal fishing and faces a very grave threat from plastics pollution. We have taken measures to strengthen legislation to protect our marine diversity. We echo the statement of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework Target 3 to conserve at least 30% of the planet by the year 2030 by taking urgent and concrete action to halt and reverse biodiversity loss on our land and in our sea. We, myself as President and the government led by our founding father, Prime Minister Xanana Guzmão, we are determined to protect our exclusive economic zones against predatory commercial activities. The Northern EEZ will be no-take zone by 2025. Traditional fishing activities by coastal communities will be adequately supported to improve their livelihood. We have formulated NAPAs and revised the NDCs as required by UNFCCC, with adaptation priorities for the short, medium, and long-term actions, including agriculture, food security, freshwater, infrastructure, and health. On mitigation, Timor-Leste is fully engaged to have a low-carbon development path with priorities given to renewable energy and reforestation. Some of our national NGOs are at the forefront of our strategy to repair the damage inflicted on Mother Earth. NGO Permatil has been actively undertaking water source conservation and recovery activities, rehabilitating natural dams in upper areas for increasing rainwater infiltration into the soil. NGOs with One Seed and the Timor Carbon Offset Foundation are expanding successful tree planting programs across the country. Carbon credit certificates sold in the carbon credit market bring significant return for participating communities. We will do much more if we receive adequate support, free of stifling bureaucracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of the South Sudan. Apologies for that, Your Excellency. We have some scheduling here. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Osogo, President of Equatorial Guinea. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Ante todo, me gustaría agradecer al gobierno de los Emiratos Árabes Unidos por acoger esta importante conferencia y agradecer la hospitalidad que me ha reservado a mí y a la delegación que me acompaña. Señor presidente, Guinea Ecuatorial quiere expresar su preocupación en el sentido de que todavía estamos muy lejos de alcanzar los objetivos marcados para la lucha contra el cambio climático, a pesar de tantas reuniones que se han venido celebrando para mitigar dicho desafío global. La lucha contra los efectos adversos del cambio climático constituye un problema amplio y multifacético que amenaza la misma existencia de la vida humana. Por tanto, requiere el trabajo conjunto con la participación de todas las naciones. África es una de las regiones del mundo que más secuestra el carbono y emite oxígeno en el planeta, además de ser el que menos beneficios recibe. Por consiguiente, no es suficiente que los países desarrollados expresen preocupación y hagan promesas sin cumplir sus compromisos adquiridos de acuerdo de los acuerdos de París resultantes del COP21 y aseguren la implementación de acciones tangibles para mitigar los efectos del cambio climático y trabajar para que nadie se quede atrás. En resumen, el cambio climático es hoy la principal barrera para el desarrollo sostenible en África. Por consiguiente, pedimos un compromiso renovado en esta COP28 para proporcionar a África un financiamiento adecuado, transparente, justo, así como la transferencia de tecnología. Expresamos preocupación por el incumplimiento por parte de los países desarrollados de sus compromisos de proporcionar financiamiento a la acción climática, así como el incumplimiento de los objetivos de mitigación de emisiones de sus industrias. Concluyo reiterando el total compromiso de Guinea Ecuatorial en la lucha contra el cambio climático como algo incuestionable, lo que ha conllevado a la adopción de programas para desarrollar energías renovables, así como la implementación de acciones de reducción de la deforestación y con la finalidad de convertir nuestros bosques en un verdadero sumideros de carbono y conservación de la biodiversidad. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Excellencia. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of Ghana. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I thank His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan and the government and people of the United Arab Emirates for the warmth of their hospitality to the Ghanaian delegation since our arrival in this beautiful country, and express our appreciation to the President for hosting this all-important conference of parties, COP28. We are now all aware that climate change has enormous impact on the fundamentals required for our survival on Earth. It imposes developmental constraints and burdens on our already stretched resources, and we in Ghana are witnessing this phenomenon for ourselves at first hand. Indeed, a few weeks ago, parts of my country, Ghana, were confronted with a severe humanitarian crisis triggered by the spillage of water from our country's largest hydroelectric dam, the Akosombo Hydroelectric Dam, due to unusually high rainfall patterns. Though a necessary action to maintain the dam's structural integrity, the spillage caused extensive flooding in downstream communities in its catchment area. Thousands of people have been displaced and have been forced to leave their homes, with many losing personal possessions and means of livelihood. highlighting the significant impact of loss and damage due to environmental changes. The situation with the Akosombo Dam represents an opportunity to assess the effectiveness of the commitments and support promised by developed countries in assisting developing nations to deal with adaptation and address the consequences of climate change. I therefore encourage our international partners to support the V20 Loss and Damage Fund, the Global Shield Against Climate Risk, and ultimately the UNFCCC Loss and Damage Fund to ensure the availability of robust social safety nets for the developing world during such climate crises. Ghana welcomes and appreciates the seed fund contributions by the UAE and others towards the operationalization of the UNFCCC Loss Damage Fund. Excellencies, let me state that Ghana remains committed to achieving the emission reduction targets outlined in our nationally determined contributions through increased and rapid investment in low-carbon energy solutions, particularly in renewable energy. The medium-term target of 1,350 megawatts of installed renewable energy capacity in the generation mix by 2030 is on course. This will guarantee low energy prices for accelerated economic development and universal access to electricity. Let me reiterate in concluding that Ghana continues to advocate for a fundamental transformation of the global financial system, which is aligned to the socioeconomic objectives and ambitions of developing countries. We must turn COP28 into a meaningful dialogue for fostering sustainable development with tangible and balanced outcomes. I thank you for your attention and hope the conference record will capture the full text of my presentation. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Salva Kiir Mayardit, President of South Sudan. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Your Highness, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates, Dr. Sultan Al Jaber, President of COP28, Your Excellencies, allow me to congratulate you for being elected as the President of the Conference of the Parties, COP28. I also want to thank the government and people of the United Arab Emirates for the warm hospitality accorded to me and my delegation since our arrival, and for hosting COP28 in this great city of Dubai. Your Excellencies, as the world's youngest nation and underdeveloped, South Sudan with no or little carbon emission is seriously impacted by climate change.
For 4 years now, the country is suffering from floods, droughts, excessive heat, high temperatures, and irregular rain patterns. These climate change-related factors have negatively affected the livelihoods of our people. The people are internally displaced and are forced to fight over water and pasture. That is causing subnational conflicts between the displaced and host communities. So, peace and security are clearly affected as a result of climate change. Excellencies, we have come to this COP28 with the hope that we, the world leaders, will commit ourselves to the implementation of the provisions of the Paris Agreement. I therefore urge the developed countries, which are the high carbon emitters, in this conference to increase their effort to reduce carbon emissions by over 45% in order for us to keep global temperature below 1.5 degrees. Excellencies, climate change financing to the less developed countries is very important so that these countries can implement their climate adaptation and mitigation projects. I urge the developed countries to operationalize loss and damage fund so that less developed countries that are affected are compensated. That will help them build the livelihoods of their people and restore their environments. Excellencies, before I end my remarks, I would like to remind the developed countries about the importance of capacity building and technology transfer to the developing countries. Capacity building and technology transfer is the only way for the developing countries to embark on green growth. Finally, the time for ambitious climate action is now. At this juncture, I would like to thank Mr. Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, for considering South Sudan to benefit from the early warning for all initiative, which we launched last month. Let us together play our part to heal our planet from the danger of climate change and invest in it. Thank you, and I feel honored to address this esteemed gathering. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your statement. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Faustin Archange Touadera, President of the Central African Republic. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs. Je voudrais, au nom de mon pays, la République centrafricaine, saluer l'excellente qualité d'organisation de cette COP28, ainsi que l'hospitalité légendaire des autorités et peuples des Émirats arabes unis. Cette COP 28 qui intervient après une année record marquée par des phénomènes météorologiques extrêmes qui menacent l'avenir de l'humanité tout entière, nous offre une excellente occasion de traduire les ambitions climatiques en opportunités d'action pratique et de consolider nos engagements sur les questions brûlantes de changement climatique. En effet, partout dans le monde, le nombre de catastrophes naturelles liées au climat, telles que les inondations et la sécheresse, a plus que doublé ces dernières années. Malheureusement, il est à regretter que, d'une COP à l'autre, les accords et promesses se suivent sans pour autant inverser le cours du changement climatique. L'Afrique, qui porte la moindre responsabilité dans les émissions, soit seulement 4% des émissions mondiales, est malheureusement la principale victime des impacts directs du changement climatique. La République centrafricaine, classée parmi les 5 pays les plus menacés par les effets du changement climatique, est aussi victime innocente des tensions géopolitiques qui bouleversent le monde. Pourtant, la menace est réelle et présente. Elle pourrait constituer un obstacle aux efforts pour atteindre les objectifs du développement durable si une action urgente n'est pas engagée pour appliquer intégralement l'accord de Paris qui vise à maintenir la température de la planète au-dessous de 1,5 degré Celsius. Au moment où se tient cette COP28, une partie de mon pays est ravagée par des inondations dévastatrices provoquées par des pluies torrentielles, ce qui nous interpelle sur l'urgence climatique. Mesdames et Messieurs, la COP27 s'était fixé 4 grands objectifs, à savoir l'atténuation, l'adaptation, le financement et une transition juste. À la question de savoir qui doit payer la facture climatique, la réponse est qu'au regard du fossé entre les pays développés, principaux pollueurs, et les pays pauvres, il est naturel que les premiers financent le processus d'adaptation promis qui devrait permettre aux pays du Sud de mieux faire face aux impacts du changement climatique et de réduire les effets de ceux-ci sur les populations. La République centrafricaine se réjouit de la création du Fonds des pertes et dommages à l'occasion de cette COP. Elle souhaite qu'un mécanisme consensuel de gestion de ce fonds, qui doit avoir un caractère humanitaire, soit mis en place afin d'éviter qu'il ne soit détourné de son objectif pour servir de moyen de pression au profit des intérêts géopolitiques et géostratégiques. Je souhaite donc plein succès à nos travaux et je vous remercie. Merci.
Merci, Excellence. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Chandraprasad Santok, President of Suriname. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Good morning. All protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing here representing my country, Suriname, which is covered with 93% of rainforests, while our deforestation rate is less than 0.5%. With that comes a high-quality biodiversity which we must protect at all costs. Yes, we are a carbon sink nation and one of the only 3 carbon negative countries in the world, and we are committed to keeping it that way. For us, for you all, and the generations after us. Ladies and gentlemen, climate is a global good. The adverse impacts are felt by all, and also us, members of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM. As part of the 8 Amazonian countries united in the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, ACTO, we are also committed to fight deforestation of the Amazon region. My country and people are forced to adapt to extreme dry and wet weather events which cause losses and damages. At the same time, we must respond to the legitimate demands of our population for economic development and diversification. This we do through a balanced approach consisting of developing the natural resources through environmental friendly strategy, by sustainable forest management and active protection of biodiversity, and also by continued transition to green energy and other green innovations and technologies. The recently announced offshore oil and other economic developments in Suriname will be developed on this basis, contributing to the energy security for the world. We are committed and confident that we will remain carbon negative, and let that be very clear. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we must put into effect climate finance that actually works and which is easily accessible for all countries and people. Moreover, financial promises must be kept. It is imperative that we continue our efforts of putting the Article 6 rulebook into practice and enhance the practical implementation of mitigation, adaptation, loss and damage, capacity building, and just transition finance. Conservation of our standing forests and biodiversity should be higher valued than reforestation. Financial methodologies accounting for removals is of utmost importance to nations like mine. Ladies and gentlemen, addressing climate issues requires political will and commitment from government and business leaders by inclusivity of everyone. In closing, let us not forget that there is only one planet, and we do not inherit the planet Earth from our ancestors, but we borrow it from our children. So let's keep in mind that the planet will continue without us, but we humans cannot do without planet Earth. I thank you, and may God bless you all.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your statement. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Mogwesi Eric Masisi, President of Botswana. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Your Royal Highness, the President of the United Arab Emirates, Your Majesties, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Your Excellency, the Secretary General of the UN, Dr. Sultan Jabbar, COP28 President, this year's conference of the parties marks the halfway point between the 2015 Paris Agreement and the year 2030. It is very encouraging to me to know that it is this COP that an inventory of the implementation of the Paris Agreement will be concluded. The Global Stock-Taking Initiative will no doubt give us a clear picture that is more than anecdotal on progress towards achieving the Paris goal to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC report, released in March this year, posits that there is a more than 50% chance that global temperature rise will reach or surpass 1.5 degrees Celsius between 2021 and 2040 across studied scenarios and under a high emissions pathway. This is not good for our planet and calls for bold and transformative action. Your Excellencies, last year at COP27, dubbed the Implementation COP, we came up with the Sharm el-Sheikh Implementation Plan, which was inspired by science as provided for by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Having said that, it is critical that negotiations at COP28 result in strengthened actions and advancement of the Sharm el-Sheikh Implementation Plan. It is for this reason that Botswana supports the modalities of work as proposed by the COP28 United Arab Emirates Presidency. Recognizing that climate finance is an important enabler of climate action, it is imperative that climate finance is made available and accessible to developing countries. At the center of Botswana's radar screen, therefore, is the new collective, quantified goal from the floor of the initially envisaged US $100 billion. In our quest to accelerate the implementation of our climate change agenda, we need to enhance our actions of building resilience and addressing loss and damage that is associated with the adverse impacts of climate change. It is our fervent hope that the operationalization of the loss and damage financial mechanism will be concluded during this COP. Excellencies, Botswana is making significant strides towards transitioning from coal-fired electricity to renewable energy. As part of implementing the energy policy and renewable energy strategy, the government of Botswana has made a decision to increase renewable energy penetration from 2% to 30% by 2030. Our second Transitional National Development Plan prioritizes climate change. This has enabled the integration of climate change risks into all aspects of planning, decision-making, and implementation. As a developing country, Botswana prioritizes adaptation as it reduces the vulnerability of communities to climate-related hazards, and in so doing, protecting livelihoods and ecosystems, as well as enabling them to be more resilient. Some of the adaptation actions implemented by Botswana include development of drought-tolerant crop and livestock species, the north-south water pipeline that transfers bulk water to the southern parts of the country where there is a deficit. Excellencies, I note with satisfaction the increased number of youth organizations involved in the intergovernmental climate change process. This will indeed ensure effective participation of the youth in climate change policy decision-making processes. In my capacity as the global chair of the group of LLDCs, I wish to declare the intention of the group to participate in climate change negotiations as a group. In this regard, we seek the support of the United Nations Framework Convention on climate to provide the necessary assistance for the group to achieve this objective. Let me conclude by pledging my support to the COP presidency as you direct the debates towards timely results regarding implementation, particularly climate finance for adaptation and mitigation actions, technology development and research, and conclusion of the modalities of the Loss and Damage Fund. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Semoku Meliet Kone, Vice President of Côte d'Ivoire. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Monsieur le Président des Émirats arabes unis, Monsieur le Président de la COP28, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, il m'est particulièrement agréable d'adresser les salutations de Son Excellence M. Alassane Ouattara, Président de la République de Côte d'Ivoire, à ses pairs et à tous les délégués participant à cette COP28. La Côte d'Ivoire se félicite de la tenue de cette conférence des parties aux Émirats arabes unis et salue l'engagement du pays hôte à œuvrer avec le soutien de tous les États en faveur du succès de nos travaux. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, la COP28 se tient au moment où la planète connaît un stress climatique sans précédent, engendré par des températures records et des épisodes météorologiques de plus en plus violentes et dévastateurs. À l'heure du premier bilan mondial de l'application de l'accord de Paris sur le climat, l'état alarmant de notre planète démontre que le non-respect de nos engagements en matière de réduction de gaz à effet de serre n'a pas permis de limiter le réchauffement en dessous de 2 degrés Celsius. Des territoires insulaires disparaissent progressivement dans le Pacifique. Des pays à travers les continents sont dévastés par des phénomènes climatiques d'ampleur inédite liés au dérèglement climatique. Face à ce constat, la communauté internationale doit se mobiliser. C'est pourquoi mon pays se réjouit de la concrétisation des fonds pour les pertes et dommages aux premières heures de la présente conférence. Nous devons tout mettre en œuvre afin que ce fonds qui suscite tant d'espoir soit à la hauteur des attentes des pays les plus vulnérables. C'est aussi le lieu d'inviter le Fonds vert pour le climat et les autres partenaires à mobiliser davantage de ressources pour l'adaptation des pays africains aux effets du réchauffement climatique et en faveur du financement de la transition énergétique du continent. Toutefois, il faut éviter que le financement de la transition énergétique n'accroisse davantage la dette des pays en développement. Mesdames et Messieurs, le temps nous est désormais compté. Les pays développés doivent résolument décarboner leurs économies et tenir les engagements en matière de financement climatique à l'écart des pays en développement. En ce qui concerne mon pays, la Côte d'Ivoire, respecte ses engagements au titre de l'accord de Paris et a décidé d'amplifier son action climatique. À ce titre, mon pays poursuit avec succès l'objectif de réduction de ses émissions de gaz à effet de serre de 30,41% à l'horizon 2030 contre 28,25% anciennement. Dans le même temps, le gouvernement accélère la transition énergétique du pays en vue de porter à 42% la part des énergies renouvelables dans son mix énergétique d'ici 2030. Plusieurs projets dans les domaines solaires, de la biomasse, de l'hydroélectricité sont en cours afin de mettre en valeur l'énorme potentiel du pays en énergie renouvelable de sources diversifiées. La Côte d'Ivoire poursuit également la mise en œuvre de son programme de reconstitution de son patrimoine forestier et d'agriculture zéro carbone. Mieux, mon pays est aujourd'hui prêt à émettre des crédits de carbone résultant de la forêt de taille qui dispose d'une forte capacité de séquestration de carbone. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, cette conférence doit nous permettre de renouer avec des objectifs fixés à Paris en 2015 afin d'inverser la trajectoire actuelle du réchauffement de notre planète et de sortir de l'inaction climatique qui nous condamne tous. Pour cela, l'accès aux ressources climatiques doit être facilité aux pays en développement. L'Afrique doit poursuivre son plaidoyer en faveur d'une réforme urgente de la gouvernance financière climatique en vue de la rendre inclusive, équitable et représentative de toutes les parties prenantes. Mon pays estime que c'est à cette seule condition que les pays africains devront et releveront le défi du financement de leurs contributions déterminées au niveau national. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now it is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Mohammed B.S. Jallow, Vice President of the Gambia. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of His Excellency President Adam Barrow, President of the Republic of the Gambia, I would like to thank the people and government of the United Arab Emirates for the warm welcome and hospitality accorded to me and my delegation. I congratulate His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, President of the United Arab Emirates and ruler of Abu Dhabi, for the successful organization of the 28th Conference of the Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Excellencies, it is with great humility and honor that I stand before you today at this crucial climate summit to share with you the Gambia's experience in combating climate change and addressing problems caused by climate-related events. My government is aware of the challenges posed by climate change. They are real and they affect us all. The theme of this event, climate transition and adaptation, encapsulates our shared journey towards a sustainable future. It acknowledges that we must transition from practices that harm our planet and adapt to changes we are currently facing. We recognize that transitioning to a low-carbon, sustainable economy is not only an environmental imperative, but also an economic opportunity. Therefore, we are still committed to promoting the use of green and clean energy, sustainable agriculture, and eco-friendly technologies. We have the fervent belief that this transition will not only reduce our carbon footprint, but also create jobs, stimulate innovation, and improve the quality of our life of our citizens. Reports published by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change demonstrate that Africa is highly impacted by climate change. In the Gambia, a small and vulnerable low-lying nation, we have acutely felt the impact of climate change in recent years. Erratic weather patterns, cyclic floods and droughts resulting to food insecurity, population displacements, and increased temperatures are occurrences affecting our communities, agricultural production, and water resources management. The Gambia updated its nationally determined contribution in December 2021 and submitted its long-term climate-neutral development strategy 2050 to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in September 2022 in accordance with its obligations under the Paris Agreement. In addition, we are working on local adaptation measures that range from reinforcing flood mitigation infrastructure to implementing climate-resilient agricultural practices, including recently launched climate-smart agricultural projects, climate-resistant fisheries, and adaptive capacity strengthening of our rural population through climate-resilient and diversified livelihoods. These actions are vital for safeguarding our people and ecosystems. However, our strides to combating climate change through adaptation and mitigation means are mainly hindered by lack of financial resources necessary to invest in clean energy, resilient infrastructure, and adaptive measures. As countries most affected by climate change, our shared goal must be to bridge the gap between aspiration and action through global cooperation. We encourage the international community to honor their commitments to international agreements, particularly the Paris Agreement. Adequate and predictable funding, structured for quick disbursements and not tied up in complex red tape, is essential to support countries like ours as we embark on this transformative journey. We call upon the developed countries that have contributed more to the accumulation of greenhouse emissions to deliver on their promise and increase financial support to vulnerable nations so as to enable them to undertake the necessary transitions and build climate-resilient societies that is critical to meeting the SDG targets. Excellencies, as we transition, we must also adapt to the climate impacts that are already here and those that are yet to come. We must protect our communities and ecosystems from the unavoidable effects of climate change. Our communities need support and strategies to build their resilience. Education and awareness creation should be the cornerstones of our approach. We must educate our citizens about climate change, foster a sense of stewardship, and inspire them to participate actively in our efforts to transition and adapt. We must view climate education as an investment in the future, which requires the effort of all. In conclusion, let us remember that climate change does not discriminate based on nationality or wealth. It is incumbent upon us to act together with determination and urgency. We would once again reaffirm our readiness to play our part in the global effort to combat climate change and create a better world for future generations. Our NDC is ambitious enough to contribute our fair share to achieving the net zero emissions target. Together, we can achieve our climate goals through collective action. We can ensure that finance, climate transition, and adaptation are not just themes for discussion, but cornerstones of our shared future to have a healthy and wealthy planet. I thank you, and let us work together for a more sustainable and resilient world.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. David Choquiohoncha Cespedes, Vice President of the Plurinational State of Bolivia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Los pueblos originarios de la Madre Tierra nunca se han adaptado al mundo del divisionismo y del desequilibrio. Han resistido la colonización genocida y el imperialismo y el capitalismo sin dejar de danzar, sembrar y cosechar. Durante siglos los operadores de la geopolítica de dominación han vulnerado y saboteado el flujo natural de la complementariedad en todas las manifestaciones de vida. Las doctrinas religiosas, políticas, económicas, jurídicas, genetistas y medioambientalistas del Occidente y de la modernidad han fabricado relaciones de poder y dominación, las guerras, el sufrimiento y la pobreza en el mundo. A la humanidad se le niega a vivir en complementariedad, equilibrio y armonía, y es conducida a las guerras, a matar la vida y a morir. Hoy se practican múltiples sabotajes contra la vida. Los mayores sabotajes son el hackeo de la información genética de la Madre Tierra para reemplazar la vida natural por la vida sintética, la sustitución de la inteligencia natural por la inteligencia artificial, la creación de la doctrina y dogma del cambio climático para reafirmar los mandamientos y paradigmas occidentales y capitalistas como leyes universales. El egocentrismo, la codicia del antropoceno son la génesis de la crisis climática, que es una larga historia de injusticias, mentiras y hipocresías. El mal desarrollo del norte global ha causado el desequilibrio planetario, usando la rueda motriz de la trilogía colonialismo, patriarcado, capitalismo. que gira propulsada por el empobrecimiento y dependencia continua y sin límites del sur global. El norte global multipolar se otorga derechos que contravienen los derechos del sur. Los países ricos del norte global arguyen que no tienen dinero, pero gastan fortunas en la industria militar y en genocidios como el de Ucrania y Palestina. Los países en desarrollo acuerdan libre y voluntariamente un camino ancho para el norte global y muy angosto y sacrificado para el sur global, que los conduce hacia el precipicio de su autodestrucción voluntaria. Los programadores del mundo utilizan la Convención de Naciones Unidas del Cambio Climático para subyugación de la mente de la humanidad al dogma del cambio climático que crea la utopía de un capitalismo descarbonizado y un único demonio que es el carbono. El mundo empieza a repetir mecánicamente las consignas de una ciencia contraria a toda justicia climática y al respeto de los derechos de la madre tierra. Los dueños del sistema, dueños de la ciencia, dueños de la banca, dueños de la industria armamentista, culpan por sus fechorías a los pueblos y a la madre tierra, pero todos sabemos que la única culpa la tiene su ciega devoción a su dios dinero, que como Cronos, el dios griego, está devorando a sus propios hijos. Es por ello que convocamos a los pueblos originarios del mundo, porque son los que pueden desenmascarar las mentiras y revelar la verdad para hacer respetar y defender la cultura de la vida y de la madre tierra, desenmascarando la recolonización del carbono basado en el consentimiento libre y voluntario de sus víctimas sumisas y inconscientes, despertar el potencial de sus sabidurías ancestrales y milenarias para despolarizar la polarización del norte global multipolar versus sur global multipolar para vivir todos en complementariedad, equilibrio y armonía. Los pueblos originarios son la esperanza para salvar a la madre tierra de las múltiples crisis originadas por la civilización occidental neocolonial, capitalista, imperialista y patriarcal. Solo reconociendo sus raíces, la humanidad será libre. Negándose a sí misma, seguirá siendo sometida y dominada. Es hora de reparar y sanar la vulnerada complementariedad entre los pueblos y entre todas las manifestaciones de vida. Es hora de volver al camino de la verdad, de la complementariedad, armonía, equilibrio y la paz. No hay justicia climática sin el encuentro entre la ciencia y la vida. No hay justicia climática sin aceptar que la naturaleza del ser humano es inteligente y no es artificial. Jayaya a los pueblos del mundo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Next, I have the pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. João Manuel Goncalves Lourenço, President of Angola. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Sua Excelência, Sua Alteza Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Chefe de Estado dos Emirados Árabes Unidos, Sua Excelência Dr. Sultan Hamed Al Jaber, Presidente da COP28, Excelência Chefes de Estado e de Governo, Excelência Sr. Simon Steele, Secretário Executivo da Convenção Quadro das Nações Unidas sobre as Alterações Climáticas, prezados delegados, minhas senhoras, meus senhores. É com a mais elevada honra que me dirijo às distintas delegações presentes nesta 28ª Conferência das Partes da Convenção Quadro das Nações Unidas sobre as Alterações Climáticas, expressando desde já os nossos agradecimentos às autoridades dos Emirados Árabes Unidos pelo acolhimento que nos foi reservado à nossa chegada a esta cidade de Dubai. Destaco a relevância muito especial que o evento assume por se tratar de uma ocasião em que faremos a primeira avaliação global do Acordo de Paris, em cujo âmbito será avaliado o impacto das políticas que temos implementado conjunta e individualmente, com o propósito de alcançarmos o objetivo que consiste na mitigação das graves consequências das alterações climáticas que têm assolado o nosso planeta. É claro que, em consequência dos efeitos dessas alterações, os nossos países são, de entre outros, o segmento mais afetado pelas mudanças climáticas, sobretudo porque há uma incidência bastante nefasta deste processo no dia a dia das pessoas, na sua atividade produtiva, na sua mobilidade e qualidade de vida. Excelências, fazem parte das prioridades centrais em todos os programas e estratégias de desenvolvimento sustentável que delineamos na República de Angola, a questão das alterações climáticas, as quais consideramos uma preocupação crítica, merecendo por isto uma atenção especial, sempre com a finalidade de reforçarmos a nossa resiliência face aos efeitos dessas mudanças, que já têm atingido de forma muito séria o povo angolano na sua vida cotidiana, pelo risco de destruição dos ecossistemas de diferentes espécies em algumas regiões do nosso país. Encaramos com muita firmeza e empenho todas as questões relativas às mudanças climáticas, o que está refletido na Estratégia Nacional para as Alterações Climáticas 2022-2035, onde constam iniciativas e visões alinhadas com a Agenda 2063 da União Africana e com os Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável das Nações Unidas. Realçamos a nossa aposta nas energias renováveis, que representam um dos principais pilares da adaptação às alterações climáticas, constituindo um passo decisivo no processo de transição energética. Estamos decididos a alterar a matriz energética nacional, privilegiando as fontes de produção de energias limpas com a construção de aproveitamentos hidroelétricos e de parques fotovoltaicos, que fazem com que mais de 65% dos atuais 6.400 megawatts da energia produzida no país sejam já de fontes ecologicamente recomendadas por serem amigas do ambiente. Com o programa em curso de extensão da Rede Nacional de Transporte e Energia, das principais fontes de produção localizadas na bacia do Baixo Kwanza para as províncias do leste e do sul do país, nossa ambição para os próximos 4 anos é a de descontinuar a utilização das centrais térmicas que ainda alimentam algumas parcelas do território nacional, o que vai representar não só uma grande poupança financeira, como um grande benefício ambiental com a redução significativa da queima de combustíveis fósseis na geração de energia elétrica. A República de Angola está a construir novas e a ampliar antigas barragens hidroelétricas que têm proporcionado ao país um aumento significativo da sua capacidade de produção de energia elétrica e gerado um excedente que pode atender às necessidades dos países da SADC, sobretudo com a conclusão do aproveitamento hidroelétrico de Caculo-Cabaça e o início das obras do projeto binacional da barragem hidroelétrica de Bainos, sob o rio Cunene, para Angola e a Namíbia. No contexto dos esforços que temos empreendido para aumentar de forma expressiva a nossa capacidade de produção de energias renováveis, temos estado a dedicar uma atenção muito especial à implementação de projetos fotovoltaicos em algumas zonas do nosso país, decorrendo deste facto uma enorme redução do consumo anual de diesel e, por consequência, uma contribuição para a mitigação dos efeitos da poluição e para a satisfação das necessidades em termos de energia elétrica das populações dessas localidades. Ainda neste domínio, gostaria de realçar que Angola tem um projeto de produção de hidrogênio verde e os seus derivados, a iniciar no próximo ano, enquanto trabalhamos em projetos para a redução das emissões de dióxido de carbono e do gás metano na indústria petrolífera, como nossa contribuição na luta contra o aumento da temperatura global que tem afetado o nosso planeta de uma forma crescente. Angola tem vindo a ser vítima do fenômeno de seca severa no sul do país, com efeitos devastadores sobre a vida das populações e da vida animal. Este fenômeno, que ocorre no sul de Angola, ciclicamente, e noutras partes do nosso planeta, mostra-nos a todos que é importante agir no sentido de prevenir as catástrofes de dimensão variável no futuro, com medidas de redução das emissões de gases de efeito estufa para garantir um planeta mais habitável e seguro para as gerações vindouras. Em virtude das consequências das alterações climáticas, Angola teve que procurar soluções endógenas, urgentes, para salvar populações inteiras dos efeitos da seca, investindo largos milhões de dólares na construção de um canal com 165 km de extensão e várias albufeiras de retenção na região do Cafo, na província do Cunene, uma infraestrutura que permitiu resolver o grande problema que se vivia nessa zona e ajudou a criar condições que não existiam antes para o desenvolvimento da agricultura familiar, que influiu na melhoria do quadro nutricional com efeitos benéficos sobre a saúde pública e o bem-estar daquelas comunidades. Dois outros projetos de maior dimensão, o Dundu e do Calucuve, estão a ser construídos na mesma província, estando projetada a construção de 6 outras grandes barragens de retenção de água na província do Cunene, todas no âmbito do amplo programa de combate aos efeitos da seca no sul de Angola, região mais afetada do país. Estamos a desenvolver com organizações ambientalistas nacionais e estrangeiras um ambicioso programa de educação ambiental virado sobretudo para as crianças, alunos, estudantes e jovens no geral. Com as mesmas organizações, estamos a trabalhar com algum sucesso no projeto de plantação de milhões de mudas de mangues para a recuperação e preservação dos mangais ao longo da vasta costa marítima angolana. Nesta luta contra as consequências nefastas das alterações climáticas, temos contado com o apoio de importantes parceiros internacionais, com os quais trabalhamos para desenvolver um sistema de apoio às informações de alerta e aviso sobre esse fenômeno na região angolana a que fiz alusão, de modo não só a prevenirmos de uma forma mais eficaz contra esses problemas, mas também a definir uma combinação de diferentes soluções que se considerem as mais adequadas. Excelências, no quadro das amplas medidas que o governo angolano vem tomando, no sentido de aperfeiçoar todos os mecanismos ao seu alcance, com o propósito de desempenhar um papel importante no contexto dos esforços globais para a preservação do ambiente, inscreve-se na Estratégia Espacial Nacional de Angola a iniciativa que consiste na observação da Terra por via do satélite, que está sendo negociado com o consórcio europeu Airbus para a detecção e o mapeamento de derrames de petróleo no mar, o fornecimento de dados sobre a deflorestação e áreas de exploração ilegal de madeira, o seguimento de manadas da vida selvagem nos principais parques nacionais e reservas ambientais, o monitoramento do cumprimento das normas ambientais na atividade mineira, incluindo ainda uma solução tecnológica destinada a dar suporte à monitorização do cumprimento dos indicadores dos 17 Objetivos de Desenvolvimento Sustentável. Consideramos importante que se defina nesta COP28 um roteiro em que fiquem estabelecidas as etapas a percorrer, de modo que sejam honrados os compromissos assumidos na COP de Glasgow, em que ficou definido o objetivo de se duplicar o financiamento às medidas de adaptação até o ano 2025. Ao projetar-se um novo objetivo de financiamento climático para o período pós-2025, deverá ser tomado em consideração todo um conjunto de fatores que não debilitem nem fragilizem as economias dos países em vias de desenvolvimento, que não estão capazes de abdicar de um momento para o outro dos recursos naturais, fontes de divisas, designadamente o petróleo, como a principal fonte de receitas de que dependem de forma considerável para garantir o desenvolvimento econômico e social dos países. Gostaria de aproveitar esta oportunidade para salientar que Angola submeteu à Convenção Quadro das Nações Unidas para as Alterações Climáticas em 2015 a sua primeira contribuição nacional para a redução das emissões de gases de efeito de estufa, mantendo com a mesma determinação o objetivo de alcançar a redução das emissões de gases em 35% até 2030, se conseguirmos assegurar os necessários financiamentos. À margem desta Cimeira do Clima, Angola vai aderir às iniciativas das Nações Unidas e de outras organizações internacionais especializadas sobre a descarbonização da indústria do petróleo e do gás e sobre a necessidade da medição e redução das emissões de gases poluentes, como o dióxido de carbono e o gás metano, com metas ambiciosas no quadro da batalha que a humanidade trava contra as alterações climáticas. Excelências, realizou-se em Luanda, em dezembro do ano passado, a Cimeira de Chefes de Estado e Governo da Organização dos Estados de África, Caraíbas e Pacífico, durante a qual Angola assumiu a presidência da organização. Procuraremos defender os interesses e preocupações da organização, que se centram, entre outras, nas questões relativas às mudanças climáticas, tendo em conta que uma boa parte dos países que a integram estão particularmente expostos a este fenómeno e as graves consequências que dele derivam, como a subida assustadora dos níveis dos oceanos e mares, que ameaçam fazer desaparecer do mapa algumas ilhas do Pacífico e do Caribe. Permitam-me sublinhar a importância que assume para os países destas três regiões do mundo a questão dos recursos financeiros destinados ao clima, colocando-se com grande premência a necessidade de se estabelecer no decurso desta COP28 o quadro de um novo acordo para o financiamento necessário à realização de programas ao nível global no âmbito da ação climática. Congratulamos-nos com o facto de se ter finalmente aprovado nesta COP28 o Fundo de Perdas e Danos pela grande relevância que tem para este grupo de países que estão entre os mais vulneráveis do mundo aos impactos das alterações climáticas. Procurando expressar o sentimento geral da Organização dos Estados da África, Caraíbas e Pacífico, gostaria de sublinhar a necessidade da COP28 na formulação de uma nova arquitetura financeira para o clima, considerar a justiça climática como um dos seus pilares mais sólidos. Realçamos a necessidade do cumprimento das reiteradas promessas de contribuições financeiras e acesso aos financiamentos em condições abonatórias para os países menos industrializados, menos desenvolvidos, com destaque para os pequenos estados insulares mais ameaçados com os fenómenos ambientais nefastos resultantes das alterações climáticas. Acredito que a crescente sensibilidade dos povos e nações do mundo para as questões que se prendem com o clima pode levar a que nesta COP28 se reforce a importância da solidariedade entre todos para que as metas preconizadas, quer nesta COP28 como nas anteriores, sejam encaradas com mais empenho e mais determinação, por forma a alcançarmos-las dentro dos prazos que nós próprios temos vindo a estabelecer. Muito obrigado pela vossa atenção.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Kosia Natano, Prime Minister of Tuvalu. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank you for your astute leadership in guiding our 28th Conference of Parties business, and wish you and your team success in our work and outcomes. Let me also thank the government and people of UAE, our gracious host, for their preparation and the warm hospitalities extended to me and my delegation. Each COP, Mr. President, Tuvalu is ever so encouraged by the good intentions and goodwill pronounced and announced through our beautifully crafted speeches made in these institutions as well as in other platforms the world over. But this said, Mr. President, we must always gauge our efforts by what is happening to our environment and to the people who are affected in the front line. And one begs the question whether we are delivering in our COP objectives and outcomes. As we reflect back to the transformative spirit of our Agenda 2030, we recall in 2015 that the 2030 Agenda envisages a world of universal respect for human rights and human dignity, the rule of law, justice, equality and non-discrimination, of respect for race, ethnicity and non-discrimination, cultural diversity, and of equal opportunity, permitting the full realization of human potential and contributing to a shared prosperity. That spirit, Mr. President, is now waning, as the scientific evidence attests to a pathway of an increase in the global average temperature to well above 2 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial levels. For a country with the highest point of about 2 meters above sea level, we just could not afford to waste one day. At the capital, where 60 to 70% of the population of Tuvalu lived on, every month's high tide, we are seeing 40% of the land covered with seawater intrusion. So sea level rise, Mr. President, is no longer something that we are expecting to happen in the future. As we speak now, it is happening in my country. Mr. President, Tuvalu, therefore, is proactively seeking responses and solutions and not sitting on its laurels by any imagination. In the past UNGAs and COP meetings, we announced that we are developing a long-term adaptation plan, LTAP, the Lafinga of which we are still trying to secure financial assistance to realize it. The Rising Nation Initiative, RNI, now expanded as the CSAT to include all nations which are affected by sea level rise. The Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty to phase out new oil drillings, coal and gas production. The Commission of Small Island States on Climate Change and International Law, and recently the Philippine Union Treaty with Australia. The Philippine Union Treaty is not a solution, but a response, a platform prepared for the people of Tuvalu. This platform offers hope for the future of Tuvalu and Tuvaluans. So, Mr. President, though I applaud the current status of loss and damage and the inflow of funding supports, it is our hope that the challenge on the accessibility to the fund is limited or is eliminated. Moreover, the challenges facing by the global community on price surge caused by crises around the world has shifted and created competition amongst nations about its priorities. Mr. President, all the challenges we face warrant a call to all countries to take part to address them. I therefore urge members of the UN to recognize the contribution from the Republic of China and Taiwan to assist with the climate change challenges, health issues, and so forth. Mr. President, I come to this COP with high hopes and refer to COP28 as a COP of hope. The priority of the Tuvaluan people is to stay and continue living on our God-given land. Therefore, we need not only hope and reassurance, but determined action. Every initiative, every dollar, every commitment, and any assistance to fight against this existential threat are very much needed. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now have the pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Olaf Scholz, Chancellor of Germany. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Exzellenzen, meine Damen und Herren! Erstmals seit dem Klimaabkommen von Paris ziehen wir hier in Dubai Bilanz. Wo also stehen wir als Weltgemeinschaft? Noch ist es möglich, dass wir die Emissionen in dieser Dekade so weit senken, dass wir das 1,5 Grad Ziel einhalten. Aber die Wissenschaft sagt uns ganz klar, wir müssen uns dafür sehr beeilen. Aller geopolitischen Spannung zum Trotz. Denn der Klimawandel bleibt die große weltumspannende Herausforderung unserer Zeit. Wir haben alle nötigen Mittel, um diesen Herausforderungen zu begegnen. Die Technologien sind da: Windkraft, Photovoltaik, elektrische Antriebe, grüner Wasserstoff. 2022 sind so viele Gigawatt erneuerbare Energien ans Netz gegangen wie noch nie. 1,3 Billionen Dollar wurden weltweit in saubere Energien und Technologien investiert. So viel Geld für den Klimaschutz wie noch nie. Die Nachfrage nach fossilen Energien hat sich verlangsamt. Der Höchststand ist in Sichtweite. Deutschland treibt diese Entwicklung mit Nachdruck voran. Als erfolgreiches Industrieland wollen wir 2045 klimaneutral leben und arbeiten. In der Europäischen Union und in Deutschland haben wir deshalb für weniger Bürokratie und mehr Tempo beim Ausbau erneuerbarer Energien gesorgt. So haben wir den Anteil der erneuerbaren Energien an der Stromversorgung auf ein neues Rekordhoch gesteigert, von 45% vor 3 Jahren auf fast 60% heute. Und Deutschland nimmt weiter Fahrt auf. Aber auch weltweit wollen wir zu mehr Tempo beim Klimaschutz beitragen und die Energiewende zu einer globalen Erfolgsgeschichte machen. Wir müssen jetzt alle die feste Entschlossenheit an den Tag legen, aus den fossilen Energieträgern auszusteigen, zuallererst aus der Kohle. Dafür können wir bei dieser Klimakonferenz die Segel setzen. 3 konkrete Vorschläge möchte ich Ihnen dafür heute unterbreiten. Erstens machen wir den Ausbau erneuerbarer Energien zur energiepolitischen Priorität Nummer 1 weltweit. Einigen wir uns hier in Dubai auf 2 verbindliche Ziele. Zum einen auf die Verdreifachung des Ausbaus erneuerbarer Energien und zum anderen auf die Verdoppelung der Energieeffizienz, beides bis 2030. Solange wir noch auf Gas angewiesen sind, müssen wir es so klimafreundlich wie möglich erzeugen und transportieren. Methanemissionen der Energiewirtschaft können wir einfach und günstig reduzieren. Wir sollten dafür hier in Dubai den globalen Methan-Pledge als wichtigen Beitrag zur Senkung der Methanemissionen anerkennen. Mein zweiter Punkt betrifft unsere internationale Zusammenarbeit. Wir brauchen Formate, in denen wir gemeinsam Lösungen für die Herausforderungen der Transformation entwickeln. Konkret, pragmatisch, Schritt für Schritt. Mit 36 Staaten haben wir gestern den Klimaclub gegründet, um gemeinsam die globale Transformation des Industriesektors zu beschleunigen. Mein herzlicher Dank gilt Chile als Co-Vorsitz und auch allen anderen Staaten für ihr Engagement und die guten Ergebnisse, die wir schon jetzt erreicht haben. Wir bleiben da nicht stehen. Ein weiteres drängendes Thema ist die Reform der internationalen Finanzarchitektur. Dieses Jahr sind wir da zum Beispiel bei der Weltbank ein gutes Stück vorangekommen. Das muss weitergehen in enger internationaler Zusammenarbeit. Mein dritter Vorschlag dreht sich um Solidarität und Verantwortung. Deutschland hat sein Ziel, mindestens 6 Milliarden Euro pro Jahr für die internationale Klimafinanzierung bereitzustellen, schon im Jahr 2022 übertroffen. Rechnet man die dadurch gehebelten Mittel dazu, kommen wir auf rund 10 Milliarden Euro jährlich. Deshalb bin ich zuversichtlich, dass wir unser Ziel, gemeinsam mit den anderen Industriestaaten 100 Milliarden Dollar jährlich für die internationalen Klimaschutz bereitzustellen, ebenfalls erreichen. Wir unterstützen damit die Wälder und den Schutz der Biodiversität, die Anpassung an Klimaveränderung und die Minderung des CO2-Ausstoßes weltweit und besonders in den verwundbarsten Ländern. Das meinen wir mit Solidarität. Für diese Solidarität steht auch der Fonds zum Umgang mit Verlusten und Schäden, die der Klimawandel verursacht hat. Vorgestern wurden hier in Dubai die Eckpfeiler des Fonds von 197 Staaten einvernehmlich angenommen. Zu diesem Erfolg werden auch wir beitragen. Konkret stehen $100 Millionen aus Deutschland bereit und $100 Millionen von unserem Gastgeber, den Vereinigten Arabischen Emiraten. Für uns ist wichtig, dass dieser neue Fonds den verwundbarsten Ländern zugutekommt und dass wir möglichst viele von uns diesen Fonds unterstützen. Denn Verantwortung tragen auch die Länder, deren Wohlstand in den letzten 3 Dekaden enorm gewachsen ist und die heute großen Anteil an den weltweiten Emissionen haben. Wir brauchen auch Ihre Unterstützung. Dann werden wir den Erwartungen und Herausforderungen gerecht, die die Welt an uns alle richtet. Schönen Dank.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. George Manevia, President of Liberia. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Your Excellency, heads of states and government, distinguished delegates and participants, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank the government and people of the United Arab Emirates for hosting the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, here in Dubai. I'm also grateful for the warm welcome extended to my delegation since our arrival in the beautiful city of Dubai. As we convene here at COP28, I stand before you in recognition of the unprecedented challenges our world faces today due to climate change. In the wake of COP26 and COP27, the year 2023 has been characterized by record-breaking heat, droughts, flooding, and other disasters caused by climate change, which have occurred with increasing frequency throughout the year. Our shared commitment to the 2015 Paris Agreement demands a candid assessment of our progress. The extraordinary climate shock experienced this year are not only the wake-up call, but a call to actions, urging us to re-evaluate the progress we have made so far toward achieving our aspirational goal of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2030. If after such review, we conclude that we have not done enough to meet these climate goals, then it is the responsibility of all countries present here at COP28 to adopt an imperative and more realistic agenda to implement and transform key climate-related decisions into concrete actions and credible plans, and increase the level of financial and other commitment on climate change issues, with an aim to fight back climate emergency and promote more coordinated actions to combat climate change. In an address 2 years ago at COP26 in Glasgow, I call attention to the inherent imbalance in the current architecture of climate change financing, and suggested that there needs to be a fundamental shift in the way that we tackle this mismatch in climate investment. Today, let me reiterate that major greenhouse gas emitting countries will need to develop new initiatives for emissions reductions and not only fulfill, but significantly increase the financial pledges that they have previously made for funding United Nations climate financing initiatives. At the same time, care should be taken to overhaul and regulate carbon credit financing mechanisms to ensure more transparency and accountability so that they are not used merely as an avenue for high emitters to avoid responsibility for reducing emissions. Vulnerable nations such as Liberia will require more financial support to protect us from the ravages of global warming and climate change. Funding for adaptations and mitigation is crucial, and compensation for the loss and damage already inflicted must be an urgent consideration. Your Excellency, distinguished delegates, and ladies and gentlemen, in our shared stewardship of this global village, let our deliberations at COP28 culminate in resolute decisions and practical initiatives. I challenge each of you to contribute to the preservation of planet Earth, our only home, for the sake of generations yet unborn. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Next, it is my pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Evariste Ndayishimiye, President of Burundi. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Votre Altesse, Monsieur le Président des Émirats Arabes Unis, Majesté, Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, Monsieur le Secrétaire général des Nations Unies, Mesdames, Messieurs, tout protocole observé. Gloire soit rendue à Dieu qui nous a rassemblés dans cette belle ville de Dubaï autour d'un sujet qui éveille l'attention de tous, le changement climatique, un des défis les plus pressants de notre planète. Avant tout propos, j'adresse mes vifs remerciements au président des Émirats Arabes Unis pour l'accueil chaleureux et l'hospitalité légendaire qui nous ont été réservés depuis notre arrivée. Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, la COP 28 me donne l'agréable opportunité de joindre la voix du Burundi à celle du monde qui en appelle aux actions concrètes et urgentes pour secourir la planète. Le Burundi, verdoyant, longé de cours d'eau et de lacs et riche en biodiversité, subit de plein fouet les effets du changement climatique que nul n'ignore. Pour y faire face, le Burundi, tout comme d'autres pays signataires de l'accord de Paris, s'est engagé à travers le document de contribution déterminé au niveau national et a intégré la protection de l'environnement, le renforcement de la résilience au changement climatique et la sécurité alimentaire dans les politiques nationales et dans la vision du Burundi, pays émergent en 2040 et pays développé en 2060. Comme vous le savez, les aléas climatiques n'agissent pas seulement sur l'environnement physique, ils affectent aussi la bonne santé des populations. À cet effet, le Burundi a pris en compte les mesures sanitaires dans le plan d'atténuation du changement climatique et a battu le record dans le récent rapport de l'Alliance mondiale pour le changement climatique en s'alignant en tête de liste des pays ayant le plus pris en compte la santé de la population dans leur plan d'atténuation. Plusieurs initiatives de protection et de restauration des paysages ont été prises, notamment un vaste programme national de reboisement dénommé Ewe Burundi Urambaye, le Burundi couvert, la promotion de l'agroforesterie, le traçage des courbes de niveau, etc., tout en impliquant bien sûr toutes les couches de la population. J'aimerais saluer à cette occasion la mise en place du fonds pertes et dommages dans le souci de soutenir les efforts des pays moins polluants dont le Burundi fait partie pour renforcer leur résilience au changement climatique et mieux contribuer à la régulation du climat mondial. Avant de clore mon propos, je réitère l'appel à une synergie d'efforts pour concrétiser nos discours par des actions. J'ose espérer également que de cette COP 28 sortiront des réformes qui allégeront les lourdes procédures d'accès aux mécanismes de financement déjà existants. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Ms. Mia Amoa Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I have 180 seconds to address you. And in 180 seconds, we really need to understand what we face. We want to thank all for the progress that we've made so far, whether it is loss and damage, the fund that has been created but really needs now to be properly capitalized, the recognition that loss and damage alone, however, is only a part of the equation, because for every dollar that we spend before disaster, we can save $7 in damage and indeed in loss of lives. The truth is that we are in danger of being sucked in to an international media frenzy that allows us only to capture that which can be captured in a soundbite. Our world is more complex than that, and we continue to need significant funds for adaptation for countries that simply will not be met unless there's a different approach to how we address both the capitalization of the international financial institutions, the commitment of countries, and indeed the recognition that non-state actors and individuals need to come to the table to add to the capitalization. If not, we will not make it possible for countries to access the funds necessary to avoid the damage. We live now in the age of superlatives. And in the age of superlatives, we've seen this year 1/3 of the days of the year exceed 1.5 degrees. In Glasgow, I said this was a death sentence. It is a death sentence for many. And the reality is that unless we change course and adopt the policies that can in fact help mitigate that increase in temperatures, we are going to see far more lives lost and far more damage done. The reality is that the global methane agreement that the world needs to see has not yet come. And while we are seeing countries move towards greater regulation, we need to be able to have concrete action with respect to the controlling of methane, largely because its damage in the near term is far greater than even CO2. Where is it going to be found for the progress to be made and to avoid the tipping point? We need oil and gas companies to agree to fix the leaks in their pipelines and to ensure that they also stop the flaring. The bottom line is that there have been voluntary commitments, but that has not gotten us very far. We need strong regulation and compliance to ensure that we can minimize the extent to which that continues to lead and hurl the world into hotter temperatures. Similarly, we need to make sure that waste management practices, as well as farming practices,
are changed in order to be able to control the level of methane that the world is seeing. The science must be simple. To turn down the heat, you simply have to turn down the methane. And until we accept that, we will go over a tipping point. Secondly, we need to change our attitude towards access to capital. And I'm not going to say, I'm tired saying it. Long-term capital is needed in order to be able to stop us from being able to choose or force us from having to choose between people and planet. The Bridgetown Initiative, the Paris Plan for Action, all of it sets out that these are tipping points that we need to pass. And since I've passed my tipping point for 180 seconds, I've asked the world simply, let us agree to leave here with a global methane agreement, and let us agree that we have not yet fully unraveled what is necessary to turn the opportunities for countries into reality by making long-term capital available. We need new players at the table in terms of the insurance companies and in terms of the credit rating agencies and the bank regulators. If not, we will be speaking to each other and not seeing the level of progress that we need to see with respect to unlocking the financial conundrum that will give countries relief to be able to save each other. I pray that the world will find it possible to restore trust and to allow the multilateral system truly to work, but we need clarity as to where the locus for decision-making must be if these things are to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Ms. Kaja Kallas, Prime Minister of Estonia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, there is no other collective effort as demanding as solving the climate crisis. I thank our host, the United Arab Emirates, who is committed to finding climate solutions. We have a clear to-do list to keep the 1.5 degree scenario alive. Estonia strongly supports the Presidency's call for a paradigm shift. We need decisiveness to translate words into action. In Estonia, we already act. We place climate at the center. Our message is the economy must fit into the environmental boundaries. In Estonia, we embrace the twin transition. With the help of modern technology, we align our society, our economy, and mindset with a sustainable future. It is necessary to cut emissions and boost renewable energy at the same time. We must triple renewable energy globally by 2030 and improve energy efficiency while phasing out fossil fuels. I encourage every country to join the pledge. We need both an ambitious negotiation outcome as well as pledges to strengthen national targets. Early signs are promising. We cannot afford to be distracted by the geopolitical scheming of those who use ecocide as a tool of warfare. Earlier this year, Russia destroyed the Novakhovka Dam in Ukraine with no regard for the catastrophic environmental consequences and also endangering the nearby nuclear power plant. Russia's full-scale aggression has a global impact, including to food security. Vast areas of arable land need to be rid of mines and pollution caused by Russia. It's vital we join our efforts not only to reduce the global impact of ecocide, but to help Ukrainians to stop the aggressor and rebuild their country sustainably. Responsible countries come together for our common future, and Estonia wishes to lead by inspiration. Today, digital is enabling our green reform. Estonia's parliament has adopted a new renewable electricity target of 100% by 2030, more than tripling our level of renewables production. We plan to reduce emissions by 80% already by 2035 compared to 1990 levels. It is a bold ambition since until very recently our energy production was dominated by fossil fuels. Bold ambition is necessary, especially now as we take stock of the implementation of the Paris Agreement for the first time. On climate finance, I'm pleased to announce Estonia's contribution of 1.1 million euros. We pledge 1 million to the Green Climate Fund and equal contributions to the UNFCCC Trust Fund for supplementary activities and the new Loss and Damage Fund. Small countries contribute to solving the climate crisis, and this year our public, private and third sector solutions are on no display in our first ever national pavilion. I've not yet spoken about our greatest treasure, young people. The new generation takes climate justice issues into their hearts and their minds. We must believe in them. In the face of climate change, people must be empowered, knowledge and tools need to be shared. You say climate crisis, we say let's act. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Andrej Plenković, Prime Minister of Croatia. You have the floor, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like first to thank the Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the United Arab Emirates, as our really excellent host here in Dubai. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is with a sense of urgency and a call to action that I address you today on behalf of Croatia, which has experienced record flooding, the most violent and devastating storm in its history, repeated exceptional tides, and the hottest year ever recorded. Unfortunately, the alarms of climate change are ringing louder than ever, every day. And the grim reality is that global warming is accelerating rather than slowing down. Greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise when it is urgent that they decrease. For the first time in the history of humankind, on November 17th, we exceeded the symbolic threshold of 2% of global warming since the beginning of the industrial era. Not so long ago, this seemed unthinkable. This is a clear warning that we must do much more to curb climate change. However, we are doing the opposite. Half of the cumulative CO2 emissions emitted over the past 2 centuries have been emitted over the past 3 decades, and they continue to grow. It is now clear that the initial goal set by the Paris Agreement to keep global warming below 1.5% Celsius is no longer within our reach. Without a radical breakthrough, the cumulative emissions inevitably leading to a 2% warming will be reached in 2 decades. This means that we have very little time left to act. Worse yet, efforts must now be intensified to stay below 2%, and the challenge already seems monumental. But this is nothing compared to the consequences that such warming would cause if we did not prevent it. Scientists are unanimous. It would cause migrations on an unprecedented scale, disrupt the political and economic stability of the world, and threaten biodiversity, food security, and world peace. We must do everything to avoid such a catastrophic scenario, which requires our collective action. Croatia distinguishes itself within the European Union with our 5th rank for electricity production from renewable sources and our 8th rank for gross energy consumption from renewable sources. We have demonstrated our commitment to a sustainable future. Our 12th position worldwide in implementing the Sustainable Development Goals reflects our determination to integrate sustainable growth into our national priorities. We have taken significant steps by introducing environmental management in public administration and incorporating eco-friendly criteria in our green public procurement. Croatia's carbon pricing has already led to a 43% reduction in CO2 emissions, and we are extending the emission trading systems to the transport and construction sectors. As the 18th global tourist destination, we strongly advocate for sustainable tourism. Innovative legislation is underway, giving more consideration to the interests of local communities and providing them with tools to mitigate the impact of tourism on the environment. Clean energy is the future. With substantial geothermal potential, Croatia is preparing numerous projects that will serve as renewable, stable and independent sources of electricity production. The DONES project, a joint effort of Croatia and Spain, explores ways to harness fusion, a clear nuclear energy akin to the power that fuels the sun, within a few decades. Croatia is participating in the Hydrogen Valley project, which brings together several countries in the northern Adriatic region. Aimed at enhancing cooperation in research and innovation, this flagship initiative aspires to develop a green hydrogen supply chain, where Croatia aims to play a significant regional role in the future. Even if Croatia is not a big polluter, we aspire to redouble our efforts because the future of our children is at stake. If Croatia, which recovered from a devastating war 3 decades ago, can now do more than its share, it would be to the credit of the largest and the richest nations not to do less. This is all the more important when we know that the richest 10% are responsible for half of CO2 emissions, while the poorest half of humanity only generates 8% of emissions. More than ever, we must act without delay and in proportion to our impact on global warming. Croatia is determined to play its full part as a reliable partner within the COP Convention. Thank you very much for your attention and all the best.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Mark Brown, Prime Minister of Cook Islands. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Your Honor, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I begin by expressing my deepest gratitude to our generous hosts, the United Arab Emirates. The remarkable hospitality that we have experienced reflects the collaborative spirit we desperately need to address the pressing threats of climate change, a threat to our very security and way of life. I will focus my remarks on 3 critical issues. First, the urgent need for a robust, first, global stocktake. This stocktake must starkly outline our current shortcomings in global climate action and offer viable solutions. The blunt findings of the 6th IPCC assessment report are grim. Our present efforts fall drastically short of meeting the Paris Agreement goals. Climate change is not a looming threat. It is our daily reality in the Pacific. We still have a chance to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees, but only through immediate, decisive action. Secondly, the issue of climate finance. To put it plainly, the world must fulfill its financial commitments. It is as simple as that. In 2022, last year, the IMF reported that $7 trillion was spent on fossil fuel subsidies. Yet the global commitment to $100 billion per year to the Paris Agreement continues to struggle for fulfillment. A mere reallocation of $1.50 from every $100 spent on fossil fuel subsidies could easily finance this commitment. In today's economic climate, the previously agreed upon $100 billion per year is now merely a starting point. To effectively alter our current trajectory, the need for enhanced support is not just immediate, but overdue. In that vein, reforming international financial institutions to facilitate accessible climate finance without exacerbating debt is critical. I therefore commend the efforts like those of the Asian Development Bank in initiating new financing modalities, offering more accessible terms for high-income countries like the Cook Islands. 40-year loans with 10-year grace periods at 1% interest mark a significant start to essential financial reforms. I urge others to adopt the example of the ADB. Small island developing states like the Cook Islands did not create this climate disaster. We shouldn't have to pay the heavy price for for protecting ourselves from its impacts. Hence, simplifying access to climate finance is imperative for swift and effective action. Despite substantial commitments to the high-level GCF replenishment, accessing such funds remains a daunting task for many nations. Last month, Pacific leaders under the Cook Islands chairmanship endorsed the Pacific Resilience Facility at our 52nd annual forum. This facility was born out of necessity to address the unique needs of the Pacific, especially for adaptation. In that vein, I express the gratitude of the substantial initial seeding of $50 million by the government of Saudi Arabia, and also contributions from those from the United States and the People's Republic of China and Australia toward this Pacific Fund. These generous contributions demonstrate a growing and much-needed commitment to Pacific nations. We therefore call on the remaining G20 nations to join their fellow members in contributing to the Pacific Resilience Facility. My final point speaks directly to this conference's theme, inclusivity. We must adopt a new mindset, as urged by our COP28 President, embracing bold and innovative solutions to meet the challenges of reducing carbon emissions. In this spirit, I refer to the Critical Minerals Program of the Cook Islands. Guided by the best available science and the full adoption of the precautionary principle, my people are exploring the potential of critical metal supply from our ocean minerals, not as an act of defiance, but as a commitment to find solutions. We urge the world not to fear the unknown, but to join us fearlessly in the pursuit of science and knowledge to strengthen the global energy transition. Through collaboration, we can protect our environment while meeting our development and climate action needs, ensuring that no one is left behind. I invite global leaders and partners to join us in these vital initiatives, bringing constructive and material support to the Pacific in this context. I congratulate the United Arab Emirates on its new $30 billion fund for global climate solutions, seeing it as a promising resource for furthering shared goals in our climate journey. Excellencies, consider the plight of those on the front lines of an environmental war that we did not initiate. Ask ourselves, what if this were my home? What if this were my family? How would you act? The Pacific, constantly under siege from sea level rise and extreme weather events, is a testament to the global implications of climate inaction. Respect, commitment, and shared humanity must be the cornerstones of our actions, propelling us towards a successful outcome at COP28. For the Cook Islands and my fellow small island nations, success at COP28 is 1.5 degrees. There is no alternative credible path. COP28 is now our best opportunity to bring our world back on course towards a sustainable, resilient, and just future. Our actions today will determine the legacy we leave for our future generations, and the Cook Islands is ready to unite, act, and deliver on our collective mission here at COP28. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Klaus Werner Johannes, President of Romania.
Thank you so much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We are all aware that the current global emissions reductions fall short of the goal of the Paris Agreement. Climate change is intensifying and its effects as well. We are facing day by day greater and more complex challenges, but our focus on the environment must be maintained. We need to enhance our climate ambition and swiftly accelerate the implementation of climate commitments already taken. Romania has some of the lowest emissions per capita in the European Union and holds a firm commitment to accelerate mitigation measures. We aim at reducing our emissions with roughly 80% from 1990 levels by 2030 and move afterwards at a fast pace towards climate neutrality. Romania's national energy mix will consist of 86% renewable energy by 2050 at the latest, completed by low-carbon energy such as nuclear. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to also acknowledge the synergies between climate action, education, and developing green skills. For example, the REPower EU program brings nationally 2 billion euros in investments for renewable energy and green skills development. The vast majority of Romanian youth finds learning about climate change in school essential to their engagement in climate action. Therefore, climate and environmental education is becoming more and more important in the Romanian school curricula. Excellencies, climate action is an important pillar of our diplomatic engagement with regional and global partners. Climate education, biodiversity protection, climate-resilient food production, and low-carbon energy generation are at the core of the Romanian climate diplomacy. We are keen on advancing projects on these areas with like-minded partners. Romania is also very engaged with global partners, including from Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America, to facilitate training and know-how sharing on managing emergency situations and implementing early warning systems. These areas are growing in importance in the context of the devastating effects of climate change. I will conclude my intervention with a call to ambitious engagement and to action for our planet and for the well-being of all our citizens, present and future generations. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now it is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Kyriakos Mitsotakis, Prime Minister of Greece. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the evidence of the climate crisis has never been clearer. Equally, the benefits of a faster transition to a net zero economy have never been more obvious. Greece embodies this dichotomy probably better than many countries. In just a few weeks, we experienced forest fires that burned over 1% of our landmass and rains that brought more water in a single day than most places receive in a year, causing unprecedented floods. And yet, alongside this climate devastation, a new Greece is emerging. We have cut our coal use by over 80%. We are growing our economy at a much faster pace than the Eurozone average while reducing emissions. In total, our emissions are down by 43% from 2005 as we turn increasingly to renewable energy. This is one of the best performances of any European country. Last year, our penetration of wind and solar was the 7th highest in the world, and our installed capacity was the 5th highest on a per capita basis. The wind and sun now generate over half of our electricity, and they shield us from the energy crisis that Russia caused when it invaded Ukraine. The environmental, economic but also geopolitical benefits of a rapid transition to renewable energy have never been more obvious. We are renovating our homes and our offices at an unprecedented rate. We are building a carbon capture and storage value chain for our heavy industry. Our islands are laboratories of cutting-edge sustainability practices. And as a world leader in maritime transportation, we take very seriously the responsibility of decarbonizing shipping, as long as we preserve our competitiveness and ensure a global level playing field. And we will soon harness one of our greatest untapped potential, offshore wind, and in particular, the winds of the Aegean Sea, an energy source that will literally redraw the energy map of the region. Our investments in energy come alongside our focus on resilience. Our early warning system, the 112 number, has proven to be a lifesaver. One message can literally mean the difference between life and death. And we need more such cost-effective and scalable technologies. Our societies are not prepared for the climate crisis that is already with us. We must devote more resources to resilience. The adaptation gap is as important as the emissions gap. And Europe has an important role to play in that direction. As we build the future, we cannot forget the past. We must ensure a just transition for the communities that got us here. And we have a responsibility to our shared cultural heritage, to protect endangered monuments from the wrath of climate change. And in doing so, I firmly believe that we will discover ancient wisdom, how to build, grow, and thrive in harmony with nature. This wisdom will come from every corner of the earth. We have so much to learn from one another and from our ancestors. And this challenge is as much about artificial intelligence as it is about ancestral intelligence. Dear colleagues, our challenge is immense, but we cannot not minimize the progress that we have made. Let us instead draw strength from it as we step into the next and most important part of our common journey together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to invite Her Excellency Ms. Katrín Jakobsdóttir, Prime Minister of Iceland. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. As we gather here at COP28, we must recognize that we face serious threats of irreversible change. We must stick to our goal to limit temperature increase to 1.5 degrees. Iceland welcomes the synthesis report by the IPCC and strongly supports its guidance on effective climate action. We have moved dangerously close to the 1.5 degree target as we take stock of the Paris Agreement. The good news is that we are seeing a burst of climate action in many countries and economic sectors, including a record investment in renewable energy. The price of green technologies is going down. All this is positive. However, the bad news is that progress is too slow. We need to do more to cut emissions, a lot more. We need to accelerate a clean energy transition, scale up green solutions, increase nature-based solutions, and make sure that those who pollute pay. But we also need to do less. Our economic systems are focused on maximizing production and consumption rather than sustainability and well-being, and this needs to change. Transitioning into clean and sustainable energy is critical for the health of our Earth, and Iceland supports the phasing out of fossil fuels. And subsidies of fossil fuels need to end. We should not burn public money to cook the planet. Instead, we should scale up support for clean solutions and just transition. We need to improve our food systems, alleviate hunger, improve nutrition and lower carbon emissions of food production, especially in developed countries. Blue food from the ocean has great potential in providing quality nutrition with a low carbon footprint. Iceland maybe does not count among the world's biggest emitters, but small states have a role to play. And Iceland has a role to play, not least in advancing green solutions from geothermal utilization to carbon mineralization. Iceland has put into legislation to become carbon neutral no later than 2040. My government will not issue licenses for oil exploration in Icelandic waters. We are implementing a legislation on the circular economy. We have set ourselves ambitious climate goals, including working on decarbonizing all major sectors. Climate action is central to Iceland's international development cooperation policy and will feature even more prominently in our plan for the next 4 years. My government is committed to mobilizing increased funding to climate financing, and we are proud to take part in the establishment of the new fund for loss and damage. Our contribution to begin with will be $600,000. We will also raise contributions to the Green Climate Fund and the Adaptation Fund. The global community needs to concentrate on the perils of climate change and environmental degradation. The right to a healthy and sustainable environment is a human right, and we need to base all our actions on that ground. Let us focus our minds at this important meeting with its global stocktake and give a clear message that we will do what it takes to save our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Antonio Costa, Prime Minister of Portugal. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Senhor Presidente, Excelências, o propósito que nos junta nesta COP28 não podia ser mais premente. São-nos exigidas ações imediatas para evitar uma catástrofe climática. Portugal está determinado a atingir as metas do Acordo de Paris e quero aqui anunciar que vamos mesmo assumir objetivos mais ambiciosos. Desde logo, a antecipação em 5 anos para 2045 da nossa meta de atingir a neutralidade carbónica. Mas para alcançar as metas de longo prazo, são necessárias ações de curto e médio prazo. Há um mês, Portugal atingiu um novo recorde. Durante 6 dias consecutivos, a totalidade da eletricidade consumida teve origem em fontes renováveis. Este sucesso não diminui a nossa ambição. Queremos acelerar a transição para as energias renováveis. Até 2030, iremos multiplicar mais de 2,5 vezes a capacidade instalada de renováveis. 85% da produção de eletricidade terá origem em renováveis e seremos líderes no mercado offshore flutuante. A experiência de Portugal testemunha que o combate às alterações climáticas é sobretudo, uma oportunidade. O investimento nas renováveis foi uma garantia de estabilidade quando a invasão da Ucrânia pela Rússia abalou a segurança energética da Europa. Em Portugal, a transição climática representará, sobretudo, uma enorme oportunidade. Uma oportunidade, desde logo, para a investigação e desenvolvimento, para a inovação. Uma oportunidade de investimentos, muitos deles já em curso, de 85 mil milhões de euros nas próximas 2 décadas, cerca de 35% do nosso produto interno bruto. Investimentos no solar, no eólico offshore, mas também no hidrogênio verde e em outros gases renováveis, em biocombustíveis e em combustíveis sintéticos, na valorização do lítio e no desenvolvimento da sua fileira industrial. E ainda, na nova indústria que a energia verde promove, desde a mobilidade elétrica até ao aço verde. Estes investimentos são uma oportunidade para criar mais e melhores empregos, uma oportunidade para Portugal ser, a plataforma da indústria verde da União Europeia. Mas é crucial que a transição energética seja justa e não deixe ninguém para trás. Essa é para nós uma questão central e um desafio com o qual também já nos deparamos com o encerramento das últimas 2 centrais a carvão em 2021. Investir na qualificação e na requalificação e combater a pobreza energética são, por isso, também uma prioridade. Excelências, o investimento em políticas sustentáveis tem um custo financeiro significativo e desproporcional nos países em desenvolvimento. Por essa razão, Portugal vai investir ao longo desta década mais de 68 milhões de euros na cooperação internacional para o clima. Em junho, assinámos com Cabo Verde e ontem com São Tomé e Príncipe compromissos inovadores para a conversão da dívida em financiamento climático. Até 2005, vamos converter 15,5 milhões de euros da dívida em investimento nos fundos climáticos destes 2 Small Island Developing States. E em 2025, acreditamos que a avaliação positiva deste primeiro passo nos permitirá generalizar esta conversão em investimento da totalidade da dívida de Cabo Verde e de São Tomé. Este ano, aumentámos também as verbas para a cooperação internacional. Quadruplicámos ontem o nosso compromisso com o Green Climate Fund. E posso anunciar que iremos contribuir com 5 milhões de euros para o novo Fundo de Perdas e Danos sobre o Clima. Não há ação climática, excelências, sem ação oceânica. O nexo clima-oceano é central na nossa estratégia. Antecipamos, por isso, para 2026 a meta de classificar 30% da área marinha e ainda a semana passada demos um passo importante ao criar a área marinha protegida do Recife do Algarve. E queremos continuar a investir nesta área, designadamente através do desenvolvimento do Observatório Climático do Oceano e promovendo o empreendedorismo e as startups ligadas à economia azul. Uma palavra final para a importância da proteção ambiental. Este ano já alcançamos o objetivo de garantir proteção legal a 30% do território nacional. Estamos empenhados numa reforma da floresta que previna estruturalmente os incêndios florestais. Ao longo dos últimos anos, triplicámos o investimento na gestão de fogo, dando clara prioridade à prevenção. E a semana passada aprovámos a instituição do mercado voluntário do carbono, de modo a mobilizar investimentos privados para acelerar as ações de mitigação. Excelências, inverter a trajetória que levará o nosso planeta à ruptura exige uma ação mais rápida, mais concreta e mais ambiciosa, como nos pede o secretário-geral das Nações Unidas, António Guterres. Muitas vezes ouvimos dizer que não há planeta B. A verdade da história é que o planeta já existia antes da humanidade e provavelmente pode sobreviver à humanidade. O que nós sabemos é que a humanidade não sobreviverá a si própria e que não há humanidade B. É mesmo por nós, por aqueles que nos sucederão, pelos nossos filhos, os nossos netos, os netos dos nossos netos, que nós temos de agir já e hoje. E é por isso que Portugal permanecerá um parceiro empenhado nesta transição. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is now my pleasure to invite His Excellency Mr. Rumen Georgiev Radev, the President of Bulgaria. You have the floor, Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me first express my gratitude to the United Arab Emirates for hosting this year's conference and congratulations on your National Day. Once exceptional, extreme weather events like wildfires, floods, storms and droughts that are now occurring with increased frequency demand decisive actions. Therefore, we expect COP28 to streamline the political guidance, especially on the global stocktake, resulting from the high-level events and intense negotiations that will shape our collective commitment to climate action. Rising to the challenge of climate change requires a holistic approach to accelerate the transition towards sustainable, low-carbon economic models. Bulgaria has experienced significant economic growth and transformation in recent decades. Presently, our greenhouse gas emissions have decreased by more than 50% compared to base year, one of the biggest reductions in Europe. Today, however, the efforts to climate neutral transition should go far beyond emissions targets. Our main challenge is to guarantee the sustainability of this transformation without compromising the standard and quality of life of our citizens and the competitiveness of our economies. Overcoming this challenge requires systematic innovative approach and harnessing the latest technology achievements. Examples of innovative technologies for decarbonization can be seen at the Bulgarian Pavilion during this conference. Furthermore, to drive the transition responsibility, we must ensure that our education, health, social and economic systems are adapted to protect the most vulnerable, which is especially relevant for children. In that respect, let me highlight that Bulgaria is one of the first signatories in Europe of the Declaration on Children, Youth and Climate. To promote the fulfillment of children's right to a healthy environment. Mr. President, one of the expected outcomes of COP29 is to figure out the COP29 presidency. Facing an unprecedented deadlock in the Eastern European group, Bulgaria, as one of the candidate countries, has been extremely constructive and proactively seeking for compromise in the process. We will continue with this responsible approach to find a solution towards a smooth transition between COP28 and COP29. In conclusion, I would like to assure you that my country remains actively engaged in advancing our climate agenda, and we will work with other parties towards a sound, positive outcome of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I would like to kindly remind all that the speech should be 30 minutes. Thank you. And now it is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Jonas Gahr Støre, Prime Minister of Norway.
Madam President, we are in Dubai to carve out a clear way forward for a 1.5 target and climate resilience. Energy transition is the linchpin of a roadmap for ambition and action. We must join forces behind collective commitment to phase out use of unabated fossil fuels. And phasing out means also rapidly phasing in renewables. Norway supports a call for global tripling of renewables and doubling of energy efficiency by 2030, at a speed and scale to achieve global peaking of greenhouse gas